A city on edge.
I cannot believe this is happening in our community. Minneapolis used to be known as an open city, as a loving city, and now it is invaded. It's invaded by ICE.
Clashes between protesters and authorities.
It's war zone out here.
America is supposed to be getting better.
As Minnesota leaders say, thousands of federal agents have descended on their state.
News reports simply don't do justice to the level of chaos and disruption and trauma the federal government is raining down upon our communities.
Now a second shooting by ICE agents, fueling more fear and anger. The Trump administration says it's not backing down on its immigration crackdown and threatens to invoke the Insurrection Act.
How would you describe what you were seeing on the ground there?
I describe it as violent and a violation of the law in many places.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Anna Laurel. Minneapolis has seen protests escalate since a federal agent shot and killed Renee Good. The Trump administration has sent more federal agents to the city. Now, the president has threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act in Minnesota. His warning comes hours after clashes between protesters and federal agents following a second shooting in the city. Minneapolis's mayor described the situation as not sustainable. There are 3,000 federal agents in a city with 600 police officers. State and local leaders, as well as organizations, filed lawsuits over ICE operations in the state. We'll dive into all of this today. Let's start with the latest shooting. The Department of Homeland Security says a federal agent shot a man in the leg Wednesday after he resisted arrest. The department says the agent fired after he was attacked by people nearby and acted in self-defense. Gordon Severson has the latest.
Homeland Security says the shooting happened here in this neighborhood when an ICE agent tried to arrest a man from Venezuela that they say is living here in the U.S. illegally. The shooting sparked a massive protest in the neighborhood last night, and now city leaders are worried that this could make an already tense situation in the city much worse. With news of another shooting involving ICE agents, protesters rushed the scene.
It's the people versus them now. That's the only thing I could come up with at this point.
It's not necessary to me.
Minneapolis police say the crowd grew fast, with some protesters throwing fireworks and snowballs at police officers who were securing the crime scene.
This is already a very tense situation, and we do not need this to escalate any further.
Police Chief Brian O'Hara says he called the Minnesota BCA to investigate, and they were on scene until around midnight collecting evidence. Thursday afternoon, Homeland Security released new details about the three men they say are involved in the attack. Federal officials say all three are from Venezuela, living in the U.S. illegally. They say Julio Cesar Sosa Celis was their target, and an ICE agent was trying to arrest him when the other two men came out of a home and started beating the agent with a shovel and a broomstick. DHS says the agent shot Sosa Celis in the leg, and he and the agent are both receiving treatment at a nearby hospital.
It's my understanding that this is a non-life-threatening gunshot wound.
Federal officials say the other two men are in ICE custody. We found records for one of them that confirmed he was in ICE custody, but the records didn't say where. Carol Levin also found criminal records for two of the men that showed some driving violations, but no other crimes were on their record. While the investigation continues, city leaders are hoping the incident does not spark even more violence in the city.
I have faith that the investigators are involved will follow every lead in this case and ensure it is completed to its logical conclusion.
Now, we're trying to confirm some of the information we are receiving from DHS with some other local sources and eyewitnesses here in the neighborhood. The Minneapolis police chief did confirm that officers did see a snow shovel and a broomstick here at the scene, and he is waiting for the BCA to hopefully release some more information about what happened.
Minnesota and Minneapolis leaders are asking people to stay calm and protest peacefully. Among them is Governor Tim Walz. He delivered a rare primetime speech Wednesday night to address the rising tension brought on by the presence of thousands of ICE agents in the state.
Armed, masked, undertrained ICE agents are going door to door, ordering people to point out where their neighbors of color live. They're pulling over people indiscriminately, including U.S. citizens, and demanding to see their papers. Let's be very, very clear. This long ago stopped being a matter of immigration enforcement. Instead, it's a campaign of organized brutality against the people of Minnesota by our own federal government.
The governor asked people to carry their phones and be prepared to film ICE activities when they see them in neighborhoods. He says this could create evidence for, quote, future prosecution. In a post on his Truth Social platform, President Trump threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act to deploy federal troops to Minnesota. He said it's in response to protests and what he called attacks against ICE agents. Jessica Hart has been digging into what exactly the Insurrection Act is, how it works, and what it could mean for the state.
Attorney General Keith Ellison says if it's invoked, his office is ready to challenge that in court. A political expert I talked with says he can't take proactive steps because nothing has happened. And even if it does get invoked, he says his legal options are limited. A rare federal act has been threatened on Minnesota after protests have erupted over ICE operations.
The Insurrection Act is a pretty powerful piece of legislation.
David Schultz is a political science and law professor at Hamline University.
The president gets to determine what is an insurrection and when to invoke it and when to, let's say, shut it down.
He says the act is meant to be used in extreme situations.
The Insurrection Act was adopted in 1807, and as the name implies, it's supposed to be invoked by the President of the United States in, let us say, real severe situations when the U.S. is, let's say, under attack, or there's an incredibly, let us say, dangerous domestic disturbance or problems.
Schultz says if it's invoked, people would see military in their neighborhoods assisting federal agents.
The Insurrection Act does not give the military the authority to replace local authorities. It doesn't give them the authority to do primary law enforcement activities either. The Insurrection Act does not mean the suspension of the Constitution, does not mean the suspension of basic rights and liberties. That there is no provision in the Constitution that allows for what people call martial law.
That also means habeas corpus isn't suspended under the Insurrection Act, Schultz says. Even though Trump has threatened to invoke it, Schultz says presidents have restrained from invoking it in the past because having the military on streets in a democracy, he says, isn't a good look.
The president has threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act twice before, once during the 2020 George Floyd protests and last June amid ICE protests in Los Angeles. According to the Brennan Center for Justice, presidents have used the law about 30 times in U.S. history. Presidents Eisenhower, Kennedy, and Lyndon B. Johnson invoked it during the Civil Rights Movement to enforce school desegregation. Most recently, President George H.W. Bush invoked it after California's governor requested military aid in 1992. It was in response to civil unrest in Los Angeles after 4 police officers charged with severely beating Rodney King. They were acquitted. Federal agents have been in Minnesota since last month. Their presence hit a boiling point after an ICE agent shot and killed Renee Good on January 7th. She was a U.S. citizen and a mother of 3 and a legal observer of ICE's activity. It's ignited confrontations in neighborhoods captured on video between ICE agents detaining people they say are in the country illegally and protesters who say they're protecting their neighbors. Mark Van Cleve from the Associated Press reports on what he's seen on the ground in recent days.
I'm standing on the block where Renee Good was fatally shot by an ICE agent last week in Minneapolis. The city's become the latest flashpoint in the Trump administration's crackdown on immigration. I've been on the streets documenting what that looks like for residents. We've seen agents pull people from their homes and their vehicles, but also stop them on the sidewalk, demanding identification and asking what country they were born in. One of those situations I filmed on Sunday appeared to show ICE agents forcing entry into a home and arresting a man without a judicial warrant. The enforcement actions have been disrupted by activists who've launched an organized resistance movement. They shadow officers through the city, blowing whistles to alert neighbors and slowing their movements. Those confrontations have resulted in federal officers deploying tear gas in residential neighborhoods. Folks I've talked to describe an atmosphere of fear and feeling like they need to carry their passports or other immigration documentation on them whenever they leave their home. The Department of Homeland Security says it's made more than 2,000 arrests since early December, but it's unclear how many of those people are U.S. citizens or might actually be subject to deportation. In spite of the tension, the administration isn't backing down. Agents are still arriving in Minnesota, and the president promised the state's day of reckoning and retribution is still to come.
At least 6 federal prosecutors in Minnesota resigned this week over the Justice Department's push to investigate Renee Good's widow and the department's reluctance to investigate the ICE agent who opened fire. U.S. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche issued a statement after those resignations. He said the DOJ does not believe there is evidence to back a criminal investigation into the officer who shot Good. The Trump administration and DHS said the officer feared for his life and the shooting was justified.
This administration will continue to stand wholeheartedly by the brave men and women of ICE, including that officer in Minneapolis who was absolutely justified in using self-defense against a lunatic who was part of a group, an organized group, to interject and to impede on law enforcement operations.
Minnesota state investigators said last week they were cut off from accessing case files and evidence from the shooting. That means the FBI is the only agency investigating. Governor Walz says Minnesota needs to be involved in that investigation. Good's family is accusing ICE officers of killing her and said she tried to follow agents' instructions before she was shot in her vehicle. They hired the same law firm that represented George Floyd's family to investigate. Her loved ones said in a statement they want her to be remembered as, quote, an agent of peace, and urged the public not to use her death as a political flashpoint. A federal judge declined to issue a temporary restraining order against ICE agents in Minnesota. The state's attorney general pushed for that to limit ICE's operations there. On Wednesday, the judge said the court needs more time before ruling. She gave the Justice Department until Monday to respond to Minnesota's lawsuit. The ACLU of Minnesota also announced a class action lawsuit on behalf of 3 people who said they were unlawfully detained by federal agents. Minneapolis schools are allowing remote learning as the city deals with unrest. After the break, we hear from parents on the conversations they're having with their children right now.
To the people of Minnesota, we call you to remain united. This is not a moment of blame, division, or finger pointing. This is a collective state issue that impacts all of us, urban and rural, immigrants and native-born, Black, brown, white, and indigenous. No community asked for this harm. No family wanted this pain. We must stand together as one Minnesota.
If you protest, protest peacefully. If you agitate, you have to realize something comes with agitation. Throwing things at the police officers, spitting on them, that's considered assault. We're asking you to protest with respect and with peace.
NAACP leaders in Minnesota held a press conference Thursday. They're asking for calm and peaceful protests amid the expanded federal presence in the state. Students at a number of schools walked out this week in protest of ICE action in the Twin Cities. Video from our station's chopper shows students holding signs and marching in the street. Last week, Border Patrol agents, students, and staff clashed at one high school. It happened after Border Patrol says a car chase happened to end at the school. Minneapolis Public Schools closed last week in response and just reopened to students Monday, but they have the option for remote learning through February 12th. Jennifer Hoff reports.
What is usually a reliable refuge doesn't feel like that right now for Jennifer Arnold's 7-year-old son.
He's having a hard time.
Minneapolis schools temporarily closed last week after ICE activity disrupted dismissal at Roosevelt High. The district extending the option for e-learning now for another month as Arnold's caretaking only increases.
I can't hide it from him because it is what I'm doing all the time.
The director of United Renters for Justice is usually fighting for affordable housing, now helping organize people to keep watch outside 35 schools during pickup, drop-off, and at several bus stops as families weigh what to do.
It's really hard for a kindergartner, a first grader, a second grader to learn online. And parents who have been through that know that. And for some families, it was super clear. It was like, nope, my whole family's staying home. We are doing e-learning. She's also providing rides and food drop-offs as the agent's presence here is prolonged. People cannot leave their homes. It's not safe.
That was a grenade.
Arnold says a school will go on lockdown, and a parent's priority is to de-escalate any situation with the only goal of keeping kids safe.
We're here to make sure that the kids in our community can thrive, and it doesn't really matter what their identity is. It's incredible that we have to have that conversation.
It's not just in Minneapolis. There are reports of ICE raids in other cities across the state. Sammy Salina went to the city of Wilmar, west of Minneapolis, where some people say fear has spread amid ICE raids.
Downtown Wilmar is quiet.
Usually you got like people walking around.
A sound businesses don't want to hear.
There's literally nobody.
But Andres Cabrera, a tattoo shop owner,
just around the corner here.
will take the quiet over what happened Monday.
Getting a little crazy now.
When ICE detained a young Somali woman who friends tell me is a 19-year-old high school student.
She was saying that, she had papers.
This witness asked to be anonymous. She was born here and is worried for family members who aren't citizens.
They just pulled her out of the car and she was frightened.
Foreign-born residents make up about 17% of Wilmar's population, with many coming here for work.
People are not walking on the streets today.
Julie Henslin and the volunteers beside her document ICE activity and help people it impacts.
There are multiple groups of people that are taking care of their neighbors and watching out for each other, and that we are not representative of who all of those people are.
A group of Somali women have been standing guard at this apartment for hours.
It says that we care about our community, we care about our neighbors.
One woman who asked to remain anonymous because of the targeting of Somalis says a person was taken by ICE this morning. Suddenly, we hear a chorus of honking and yelling.
So in this apartment complex, someone said that they spotted ICE, and then you have volunteers that yell, that honk their horns, that sit in the parking lot just to warn people and immigrants that ICE is in the area.
We chased them out of here.
Another woman tells me she and others follow ICE. She's family friends with the Somali woman taken earlier in the week.
It's heartbreaking to know she's 19. She's in high school.
Has ICE contacted the family?
They have not.
Republican State Representative Dave Baker says he supports ICE detaining criminals.
We can't get answers, though, from anybody about why they're taking a high school student.
He says Wilmar is suffering because of a battle between President Trump and Governor Walz.
My community right now is literally on fire.
The streets of Wilmar are either loud or quiet.
Sadness.
But volunteers say the louder, the better.
Energized to help.
Sammy Solina, KARE 11 News.
That's how I deal with it. I go help.
After the break, we dive into the tactics ICE agents are using in their operations. In Minnesota, there is growing frustration about the actions of federal agents. It's raised questions about the way they're conducting immigration enforcement. Kent Erdahl spoke to observers and a national security expert about what they're seeing.
Minnesotans who observe and document ICE and Border Patrol operations have reported more and more close calls in recent days.
They tried to chase us off the road the other day. We dialed 911, and that's when they left in a hurry. Why would you do that if what you're doing is legal?
Chelsea Kane and Courtney Azar are sisters and Army combat veterans who began observing federal agents after Renee Good was shot and killed. In the past few days, they say they've also witnessed more people arrested or detained.
They just dropped the citizen that they picked up,
only to be driven around and then released somewhere else.
That's the thing that we have seen more and more is they're doing random arrests. They're not doing warranted searches. They're not doing warranted arrests. They're not going after illegals. They're going after anyone who looks like an other.
What we're seeing now is certainly an escalation point in Minneapolis.
Julia Ainsley, senior Homeland Security correspondent for NBC News, says the addition of hundreds of Border Patrol agents is a big part of it, pointing to a Supreme Court brief issued this summer that gave them wide latitude to stop and detain people based on their apparent ethnicity.
So that really opened up where ICE and Border Patrol could go make their arrests. They could really start basically profiling on a whole different level.
Ainsley says recent videos also appear to show federal response to observers now seems to be also growing more aggressive.
And rather than pulling back operations, they are going even more full force.
And she says the threats and aggression towards those following and documenting them is likely the next battleground in court.
Obstruction of a federal operation can be an arresting offense. The question is where that line is drawn. If you are back at a distance filming something on your phone, that should be protected. I guess it's this line of whether or not they're getting in the way and actually impeding an arrest.
I'm staying out of the way. I'm not impeding them. I'm behind them. I'm giving them a wide berth.
And even if federal agents see it differently and respond with force, they both say they won't be deterred.
We've been in combat. We're cool under pressure. We have the training to de-escalate, so that's what we do. We're going to keep going out. We're going to keep documenting them to keep our neighbors safe, to keep that aggression from increasing. We're simply following. We're simply recording and documenting. We're providing all of this information to law enforcement. If it is illegal, then the state will come for me. I completely stand by everything that I'm doing. I'm observing. I'm there to make sure that our community is remaining safe, and I intend to do that for as long as ICE is here.
DHS Secretary Kristi Noem says federal agents are following the law and standard protocols. She also suggested people should be prepared to provide proof of citizenship to officers.
In every situation, we're doing targeted enforcement. If we are on a target and doing an operation, there may be individuals surrounding that criminal that we may be asking who they are and why they're there and having them validate their identity. That's what we've always done, in asking people who they are so that we know who's in those surroundings. And if they are breaking our federal laws, we will detain them as well until we run that process.
On Wednesday, Illinois Congresswoman Robin Kelly filed 3 articles of impeachment against Noem. It includes obstruction of Congress, violation of public trust, and self-dealing. She said it comes after the shooting of Renee Good and federal agents' actions in other cities. Nearly 70 Democrats so far have supported the impeachment effort. The effort, though, is unlikely to go far because Republicans control the House. A spokesperson for DHS called the impeachment efforts silly. Democrats across the country are proposing state law changes they say are to rein in federal immigration officers and protect the public. In New York, the government wants to allow people to sue federal officers who violate constitutional rights. Another measure aims to keep agents who don't have warrants out of schools, hospitals, and houses of worship. In Oregon, Democrats plan to introduce a bill allowing people to sue agents against unlawful search and seizure. California lawmakers are proposing a ban on local and state law enforcement taking second jobs with DHS. They also want to make it a violation of state law when ICE makes arrests around court appearances. Republicans, though, are pushing back. They blame protesters for blocking enforcement of immigration laws. We'll track all of these developments and the federal actions in Minnesota and continue to bring you the very latest. For now, I'm Anna Laurel. Thanks for watching.